Everybody. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 9th, 2023 meeting of the Rotary Club of Raleigh. I'm Tom Packer, your president. Great to see everybody here on Zoom as well. Back start the calendar year and finish the second half of this Rotary year. And hopefully everybody had a time to spend time with their families, friends, loved ones over the holidays. Feeling refreshed. We have a great year planned for you this year. In Rotary, with great speakers later today. And as usual, we'll get started with our invocation and pledge with Tommy Keller. There we go. Hi. Morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Afternoon. I'm up early, Lawrence. Yeah. All right. You got your heads for us, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us here together in this place. We take comfort in the fact that we've all started a new year together. We're looking for new experiences, new accomplishments. We're setting fresh goals, and our enthusiasm is brimming high. We ask that you include in our annual planning individually and corporately the idea that we would spend time with those less fortunate than us, that we would invest in their futures, and then we would carry the ideals of Rotary to all of the places that we travel individually. We thank you for this gathering today, for this food, for this club, for all of the visitors, guests that are here with us. Amen. Amen. We'd all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, beautiful for space, the sky is for in the waves of rain. Oh, is raised on thee, and from sea to shining sea. Our day, one, that's the Rotary. And we have some guests today. I believe our own Dr. Carol Carter will be the guest of the year. Introduce your guest to us. Okay, please stand up.
Everyone, this is Mr. Stephen Lappin. He comes from us from Kansas City. He started to develop the director of playing companies.
And other guests. Well, I guess we have a picture. Sir, was it this form that was not good or really here? I can't be happy. I thought we told. Oh, I see. Nice to meet you. Come here, we've been FaceTime chatting for a bit. So nice to meet you. Introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Oscar Caiza. I'm from Ecuador. I was the president for Fraternity Club, that club sale in Los Angeles, in my city, in Quito. Actually, I arrived 2 weeks ago to Raleigh, which we are with my wife, my child. We started some things here because we try to make another experience in this country, right? In my country, we have, I think, 60 Rotary clubs. And in Ecuador, we can, first of all, help the people that have the damage to the earthquakes or the volcanoes and zones. We can move from help there. And we have now project two in the public space. We are trying to move better quality of life, to modify the peace, and make some place where the people can find the solution between them. First of all, because there are a lot of people of Venezuela and the other countries, and we have the problems with immigration and other things there. I am an architect, and I specialize in urban development and management, sustainable urban development management. I was working in the municipality of Quito for 5 years, the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing for 6 years too, making some laws and some normatives for the right develop of the cities, or specifically in the public space. Yeah. And now I visiting you, and I write done, and I say congratulations all of you for the very sure you do a good job trying to help the people that it's and it is possible to I open to documentation because I arrived recently to Raleigh, and I open to tell you in all the projects that I promote now. Yeah. Thank you very much. Very good. Bienvenidos. We work forward to working with you more. More. Any other guests today? Then we'll move on. Just reminder of upcoming meetings. We will not be meeting next Monday because of the Martin Luther King Jr. National Holiday. We had a speaker spoke to us before 2, 3, 4 years ago. He's written another book. He's an attorney, writes murder mysteries, and he's like at sea investing. And then we have the publisher of Our State Magazine, which like when I first moved here to North Carolina, it was my Bible of the state, and it's I think it's and you turn down to talk to us. Tonight we also have a board meeting. This is what one of our typical board meetings looks like. So if any of you want to join our board meeting, you're all welcome. For those new members, earn your blue badge, going to your red badge. You do need to attend at least one board meeting. We have new members who attend the board meeting. Ask Linda for the Zoom meeting tonight. Ask Linda for the address. You're all welcome. This is a picture of my daughter's favorite flower after we came back from the South Pacific after World War II, called Bird of Paradise. And I just took it while I was back in California, and I thought it was beautiful. I hope you enjoy it too. Nothing more than that. I did though want to mention that, and this was brought to my attention, that we had a recent passage of one of our club's past presidents, Dr. Garrett Briggs, who was our club president and longtime member of our president in 1990. And I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention and tell you a little bit about Dr. Briggs that I found out reading his obituary and told by a couple other members. Because I think in reading about his life, I think it exemplifies the type of person and leader that Rotary draws, and that we can all learn from him as to how to blend work, life, and community in one's life. Dr. Briggs passed away peacefully on his 88th birthday the other day, December 31st, on his 80th birthday, surrounded by the love of his family after lengthy illness. Garrett was born and raised in Dallas in 1934, graduated from SMU, where he received a bachelor's and master's degree in geology, and later earned his PhD in geology from the University of Wisconsin. But in 1981, he and his family moved here to Raleigh, where he served as dean of the College of Physical and Mathematical Sciences at North Carolina State until 1988, when he became president of Peace College, now William Peace University. But throughout his career and into his retirement, Garrett remained active in numerous organizations, including the Rotary Club of Raleigh, which was president in 1990. He was senior warden in 4 different Episcopal churches. He served as board chair of the Association of Presbyterian Colleges. He was the chair of the Raleigh Salvation Army. He was a trustee at Shaw University, president of the Agua Club, member of the board of governors of research of the Research Triangle Institute, and a fellow of the Geological Society of America. And Dr. Griggs is survived by Sue, a high school sweetheart of mine, 65 years, and 4 children and family. So can I have a moment of silence as I read the bill in his honor for one of our town presidents. Thank you. So now we move on to another version of Know Your Neighbor with Tommy Kellner leading the way. And today, Tommy is calling up some people who I didn't want to mention before Tommy put her through her paces that Cindy has embarked on a new venture. And she can tell us more about that. And I'm sure we'll support her in her new business that she's started to hear all about. So Tommy and Cindy, you want to take it over here?
Yeah, the visual actually makes our morning a little bit easier. So Cindy, come on up. I'll kind of let you be by the podium and I'll just be loud. So we'll start off like we normally do. Cindy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Rotary involvement, what you do for a living, and Cindy, for those of you that don't know, is our past president.
So I moved back in 2000. I was born and raised here, and my daddy had been a member of this Rotary Club for 47 years. So, and I came back in 2000, of course, growing up, every Monday at dinner, I heard about the Rotary speakers. So he loved Rotary more than anything. So when I moved back in 2000, I joined just so I could come have lunch with him and get to know him and his buddies. And then Charlie wrote me into introduced me in the leadership. So Rotary's just been a fantastic part. And then of course Daddy passed away. And if any of y'all remember him, he always wore orange. So sort of life comes in a little.
No one's perfect. So, no, that's okay. That's all right. At least we're from the same. So, Cindy, can you tell them a little bit? We let Cindy pick 2 questions. One of hers was greatest trip that you've been on. Why don't you tell them a little bit about your greatest trip?
I think the greatest trip was I got to go to Bangkok this president. So number one, all of y'all need to serve as president at one point or another. And number 2, you have to go to the Rotary Convention. And not only was it Bangkok, but it was just a magical part of being there and seeing that it only takes one idea to change many, many lives. And just seeing all the different countries represented in all their outfits, it just was a great opportunity.
Awesome. And Cindy, before we let you sit down, why don't you take the floor for a minute and tell us about what's going on? It sounds like it's pretty big now.
So I just posted this last night. Thank you. So after 22 years of being a realtor, I started at Simpson and Underwood, and I ended with Berkshire Hathaway and decided at age 65, oh, let's go do something different. Don't do it every month. So it all just fell into place beautifully. It was definitely a God thing for me, and how all the details fell into place. I have a new office at 711 Harvey Street, right here in Glenwood. We're gonna have our grand opening on Thursday, we'd love y'all to come by and do mine, so, but, it's just gonna give me an opportunity, I have a parking lot, to be able to do more charity events. You know, stuff the truck events, hopefully we can do some more Rotary service events, and it just makes it more fun, kind of just doing more for the community instead of just counting out there looking for help.
This is awesome. I hope all of you guys take some time to support Cindy, congratulate Cindy, encourage her on her new venture. This is the kind of stuff that we want to celebrate together as a club. And Cindy, we look forward to hearing about all the great things that happen this year with the new place. Thank you for doing this with us today. Quite a small world of different lives. Cindy, this must have been 20, 30 years ago that you and I lived about 2 miles from each other. I think you were in Mill Valley. I was in Larkspur, just over the hill, it's from San Francisco. It's funny how things come back. But, congratulations. Good luck on your new venture. Why don't we move to membership? We have membership chair, Harrison Turner, to fill us in. Harrison.
Happy New Year's, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this beautiful day. It's about 15 degrees outside. The holidays give you an opportunity to kind of sit back. Well, I say just chat. The holidays give you just chaos and a lot of things going over. But I had some time, quiet time with New Year's, kind of reflect on some things. And usually New Year's resolution, I'm not going to ask who kept their New Year's resolution because usually you're out of your New Year's resolution within the first 2 days of the year. But most of the time that means somebody, you want to create a new habit or routine in your life, which made me reflect on our membership. Real quick question, if you've been a member of Rotary for over 10 years, please raise your hand. A huge majority of this room have had a commitment to Rotary for over 10 years. Thank you guys for being an example to me, as well as millennials like me, who so often have a hard time committing to their I truly appreciate your membership and your commitment to the product. So thank you so much. So first thing we have is some cool things to do at the beginning of this year. First, Jennifer. Will you please come up? We have our second reading today for Jennifer Rodriguez. She is sponsored by John Dubois. It's been a few weeks since we last saw Jennifer, but just a real quick reminder, she's originally from Pennsylvania. She moved down here to Raleigh in August 2022. And she's a business advisor for Trans World Business Advisors. In her short time here, she's been extremely involved and active in the community, which makes me really excited to be a part of Rotary. I ask this every single one of our members for why Rotary.
So I wanted to join Rotary because I love to serve and help others. I grew up in public housing and I want to be able to help that community and allow them to see how I have grown and how I have been able to, live the life I'm living now. So.
So that's your second reading. So that our next meeting should be done. So Rotary Club Raleigh. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. But also, if you have a connection with her, please reach out to her. She's had a phenomenal story, and it's worth the coffee that you're here. So thank you so much. And next, we have the wonderful privilege of providing people's blue badges. So Shakima and John Luke, would you please come up front and enjoy them? Guys, so today we have Shakima and John Luke. You both were approved by the members and the board of this club, the whole active membership of the Rotary Club of Raleigh. You expressed your willingness to become a Rotarian at your induction ceremony and pledge to abide by the principles, responsibilities, and obligations of Rotary in your personal and professional life. Membership in Rotary is honor and privilege and has corresponding obligations to live by the object of Rotary, the motto of service above self, and the four-way test. Upon your induction, you receive your red badge, which you're wearing now. and embarked on the path of accomplishing the requirements established by the club, for you to receive your blue badge. These requirements include, human orientation, going to a board meeting, being part of service project. It is in a way allowing you to get involved in the lifeblood of what Rotary Raleigh is. And you guys have completed these tasks. 7, your blue badge were established that help you get to know the club a little better. And we just want to say congratulations for accomplishing those things and taking your next step into, hopefully a long life of Rotary. So I want to provide you with your. Thank you so much. Here you are. Rotary Club Live, would you please stand and welcome? After you, my friend.
Thank you, Harrison, and congratulations to Don Luke. A couple of, things I forgot to mention also, remember, we still have the red buckets for the Dimension Alliance in North Carolina on our tables. That's got off to a good start this year, and put any extra change we have in there. There are also the Monopoly dollars on there. If you don't have change or money, you might dollar to whatever you want and put it in the red bucket. We have also been working with Empire Events, who owns Virginia Road, and we're testing out today, as you can hear, hearing enhancement device. So if any of you, or if you ever had a guest here who is hard of hearing, I'm hearing all words number 2. Hearing aid, hearing otherwise, because the sound here can be a little confusing sometimes. We do have these devices that are placed over the ear and are evidently connected directly to the sound system. So it goes directly into the ear, and it'll help people. And we'll find out very afterwards. And we'll do some testing afterwards, see how it works. But it's brand new as of today, so keep that in mind. So next, we'll go to service. I don't see Richard Avery here today. Just to know that our next service project is on Martin Luther King Day on January 16th. You've seen it before in the weekly newsletters. It's been promoted in an email, but the 2 sign locations to help with food back that day, either in Clinton or Durham. Please sign up for one of those to honor Dr. King on his national holiday, in his honor, and to do a community service as part of it. Food packing in either of these locations. Next, we wanted to get to the report by Kevin Summers and or Bill Moore about consolidation building this year. I did want to note just before we get to Kevin. I saw a lot of photos over the past couple of weeks about Bell Renting. Who all were great up there and all sorts of other. So it's just an independent news article that when we give money or we do a service like this for a charitable organization, we don't always know where the money is going or how it's being used. And Schreier found that I found the name of the charity that she's writing about, but she notes that one very, very well-known charitable organization looks a lot of good. And the CEO makes over $700,000 a year, but only 90 cents of every dollar donated is given to those in need. On the other hand, the Salvation Army, the CEO makes much less.
$199,000 a year. For large organizations, but the most important thing is that 80% of every dollar given to Salvation Army goes to those who come for help. And those are who writers talking about bang for the buck. So what we did really does make a difference. It goes to those who help. So that, Kevin, available, you both want to come up? You're going to report on. Thanks for okay, come out. Yeah, I'll dance.
You got all the information. Yeah, we got all the information. You guys can read as well as we can. We had 200 hours that we were scheduled to be out. Now, I'm proud to say that, you know, in the 4-week period, we staffed over 90% of those hours. And a lot of the time, we had 2 people out there. Now, as you can see, there were 58 different Rotarians. So I don't know, how big is our club now?
120.
120, so almost 50% of the Rotarians. This I would like seeing, a lot of those folks showed up at the end, the 25, family members that showed up this year, to help out. 30 Rotarians, we're gonna list those in a minute when I advance the slide, because this will be easier, you guys can see your name up there. So let's recognize first the big ones. These were people that served more than 10 shifts. And I'll read these, because I feel like these are Phil, John, Paul, Eric, Ema, Frank, Dublin, you're truly important. So hats off to every one of them. And also, these are folks that serve, more than 6, but upwards to 10 shifts. So again, I don't want to read them all, but you guys can see a lot of known names up there, a lot of new members. Even more. And then this is the list of all the other participants that helped out the club. We wanted to recognize you as well. So this will be in the news. And you can give this back. Bill.
Sorry, Mike Holt has reigned for over 50 years. So thank you, Surrey, for your dedication already in this club. There's a lot of to be many more years to come. Thank you so much.
And I also wanted to thank, this was a special, I had to sit there right this morning. So the biggest day we did was on December 14th. So if your name's listed up there, Pete, must have been you. Good job, Pete. There were days where there was checks from in there, but I excluded that. This is people throwing dollar bills, $5 bills. So thanks to you guys that were out there. You must have done something special.
It's called sex appeal.
Your name's up there. Speaking of checks, there were, I think, 12 Rotarians. There were 12 Rotarians that threw in checks into the kettle this year, and those checks raised in $5 from $100 up to $1,000. So the biggest contributor, though, I want to recognize Charlie. Charlie, thanks for your help. Every job. And this is Bill. Bill is this, his last hurrah as chairman. I'll get him back in 5 years. We'll like switch back. Every 5 years, we'll just get for 7 years. Okay. But Bill last year, he bettered last, or we bettered last. So as you can see, there's the final number, about an almost 9% increase over the year before. So hats off to the Rotarians around. The big question is, did we beat the Cary Rotarian? I don't know. I bugged them just to get our numbers, so we were the first when they added up. They haven't tallied up the other clubs yet. So we'll hopefully by next meeting we'll.
I'll tell a quick story.
Sure. Go to the mic.
So me and Scott was out there, and this gentleman came up, never made any eye contact at all, older gentleman, and he pulls out a big wad of cash. And he's trying to get it in that little sliver thing. So I started helping him. Then there was dollar bills to start with. Then it went to $5 bills. Then there was like a couple $20. Then next thing you know, he reaches in his pocket and he pulls out this Ziploc bag with all these roll coins, remember that? And he starts breaking them down, well, he can't get them in there, so I can get it. He never, we both tried to talk to him, he never said a word, never, why he was doing it, anything, obviously he was doing, he had his mission that day was to put that, and we guesstimated at least $80 that he probably put in the second. It's sort of an interesting story how some people do certain things. Hope y'all enjoyed that. If you did, you won't have to worry because I won't be back here. Yes.
And it was really cute because this little kid who was like 9 years old came up and he was like, I'm gonna buy a toy at Walmart. And he's like, my allowance. He's like, but you're so cold. He put everything in the bucket.
And actually, the June factor does work to John's comment, Tiffany's daughter, to get the 9-year-old girl out there ringing the bell, you'll get everybody.
And to Bill and Kevin's credit, they are on call from November 28th through Christmas Eve. They're checking in every day, people are calling, texting them. They really put themselves into this whole project. So please everybody stand and give them a sign of appreciation.
Thank you, guys.
Quickly, couple of birthdays coming up, my anniversary, Jane Boyles, Jane, if you're on the line, on Zoom, congratulations, on your birthday. 13, Martin Holmes on the 14th, and that brings us to our speaker today. I'd like to read a short introduction about our speaker today, Ernest, who I fortunately had a chance to speak with before our setting up for the meeting. And as you can see, he's written a book on what he'll be talking about today. And he has brought some books with him if people are interested in purchasing one. Terry reads the same, and he just finished it. And I thought it was great, very moving and informative book. But our speaker today is a North Carolina native. And Ernest graduated from UNC Greensboro, BA in history and a master's in public history from NC State in 2006. He served in the U.S. Army Reserve from 1993 to 1999. And Ernest has worked at several historical parks in both North and South Carolina, and currently serves as the director of the City of Raleigh Museums, down the street, across the street on Fayetteville, and the Dr. M.T. Poe House Museum as well. Down the way to the left here, on Wilmington. And anyway, Ernest's latest book, Ernest Asunder, Trauma at the End of the Civil War, North Carolina, was recently published in April 2022. So please give a hand of welcome to our speaker today, Ernest.
Thank you guys so much for having me out. In 2016 or 2017, City of Wilmington, we did an exhibit on Rotary, and International Head of Rotary comes to the museum. So we've always had a great relationship with Rotary Club about the city and provide a space where these community organizations can come in and talk about themselves to the rest of the community. So we're big fans. And so yes, this book came out in April, and it is, as I say to dear friends, it's not sit on the beach and read book. It's a pretty heavy book, and before I usually talk, I'm curious, how many of the audience have a DD 214?
Sir, you've got one.
That's your discharge paper. Your discharge, DD 214. And this talk is, it's about the end of the Civil War, just how much it hurt people, and what war does to our psyche, emotionally and physically. But also it's relevant for us today as we walk amongst those veterans from Vietnam, those Korean War veterans still around, those from Iraq and Afghanistan.
So this kind of talk, whole book kind of stemmed from looking at those experiences of veterans today, and going back into the historical record to find out that stretched apart by 160 years, those people in the Civil War in our backyard, saying, feeling, and doing the same thing as veterans that I see today. And so it's interesting that this experience of war transcends time itself. Does anybody know where this is? One. So as a newly minted Civil War historian coming out of college, I went to go get a job. This is the Vintage Place State Historic Site in Durham. Now this was incredibly the largest sprint of the American Civil War happened right outside Durham. Young, fresh college graduate, I went out there and I was so excited to tell people about Sherman and General Johnston and the end of the Civil War. And the number one question I got was, where's that? No one knew this history. No one knew about this site. And it's very undervisited. And after working there for a number of years, I was like, why do we not know about this? And what happened here? This large surrender. You know, we always about Appomattox, ending this war, and then kind of moves on to the rest of it. But after Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, there's still a lot of this war coming to a very ugly, chaotic close here. So I thought, why has this not been in our history books? And so it kind of is encouraged to start out talking about the end of the war and what it did to people's lives. Why do we forget the Bennett place? Now, this monument is called the Unity Monument. And that's one of the most unique monuments you can see dealing with the Civil War anywhere in the United States. One column represents the north, one the south, and written across this pediment shop is the word unity. Unity, peace, unity monument. But now, whenever this was proposed in the 1920s, people's heads exploded. It was all of these new Durham business leaders. Durham had grown very rich on tobacco, largely due to these northern and southern troops raiding tobacco barns, getting their hands on that sweet, smoking, bright leaf tobacco that fueled Durham. So business leaders said, hey, we need to mark exactly where Durham gets its start. They said, hey, let's put up a monument. But when this got into the newspaper, controversy. You had all the United Daughters of the Confederacy very much opposed to it because they felt it was a monument to surrender. And all those Confederate veterans were very much against this monument going up. And even in the newspapers, people from Durham wrote in and said, why in the world do we ever want to remember this thing? Memorialize this history. A lot of soldiers from the North, old soldiers and veterans organizations from the north of the Mason line didn't want to have anything to do with it either. So it's very much an anomaly. But in 1923, it is unveiled. Not a lot of public support from Durham. And this is the unveiling. You see the monument of the ghost singing in the background. And so, why was this so controversial? Why did Durham and the community not want this? And this is where the premise for the book goes. Now, I love this picture for two reasons. I'm very curious who this African American gentleman is who's actually sitting on the stage. It's almost like a crazy prominence photograph. And all those old veterans that did show up, you see them all asleep. They're all like dozing in the back. So, very curious to start with. Now, in researching this, one of the people I talk about a lot is this lady, Cornelia Phillips Spencer, and I affectionately call her the battle axe of the University of North Carolina. She is all on into university business from the get-go. And she was living in Chapelville at the very end of the war. She watched as the Confederate Army of the South marched through on their way to their own surrender. She was there, the Union cavalry occupied the city. So she watched the war unfold its last days from her house on Franklin Street. And she talked to her neighbors and friends about their experiences. And she felt really moved to write what she called a true history of the end of the war. One that she said would indict the victors for all their crimes. And as then, the last 90 days of the war becomes one of the very first public books on the end of the Civil War, published in 1866 in North Carolina. And one of the stories I start the book out with is Her neighbor was the former governor, David Lowry Swain. And David Lowry Swain and another former governor, William Graham, had watched the Union Army begin to roll towards central North Carolina. And the army wheels comes to shore. Many of you might have marched for the sea, gone with the wind, for years. And the destruction they brought really stirred up a lot of fear and anxiety in North Carolinians here at Central Park. She wanted to write a true history. Now, as she was working on this true history of all the bad things Union soldiers had done, she ran into a problem. In her recounting of what happened this last days, there were some Confederates who did a lot of bad stuff as well. Very, as these armies began to break down, become demoralized, a lot of things began to demoralize, and military discipline breaks down. So in her research, she had to come to grips with this. And what she said is one of the few quotes from the piece they got today. And what she says that what our soldiers did or did not do in the last dark days of confusion and utter demoralization, we record with sad and tender allowance. Wrong was done, and many of the things excessive committed, but we feel that the remembrance of their high and noble qualities will in the end survive all the temporary lots and wounds. And for those who perished in the wrongdoing engendered by desperation and failure and want, their causes perished with them, so perished the memory of their cause. So what she's saying is like, oh, the South belongs to all the bad things they did in those last days should be forgiven. And I think one of the problems that she ran across happened right here in Phoenix. So Swain and Graham, his former governors, raced to Raleigh and tried to broker a peace for the survival of the state capitol and state university. So they rode out amidst the skirmishing armies, sort of where Garner Road is today. They achieved a peace. The Union Army would not burn down the city. Swain brings us back into the morning of April 13th of 1865 in order to try to turn over peaceful transfers of power. But as Swain is sitting on the steps of the state capitol, he's looking down his Bayford Street, and he sees the Union Army who's right on the outskirts. And into his vision rides a problem. He sees a gaggle of Confederate cavalry riding in, and the rest of the Confederate army has vacated the city. But these stragglers ride into view, and Swain calls them the debris of our army. The tie up their horses right across the state capitol, again looting a jewelry store. Swain says, wow, this is going to violate the truce I just risked my life to forge. So he walks over to this group of cavalry and says, hey, you guys have got to get out. The Union Army is right outside our house. And kind of blow them off. It turns into a shouting match. Finally, the Confederate soldiers turned to the governor and said, damn Sherman and damn the town too, we care for you. At that exact moment, they began to see the Union cavalry start riding up fables. Bands playing, flags unfurled. All of these Confederate stragglers jump on horses and ride down the hill to the street out of panic. According to Cornelius Spencer, inexplicably, one of these lone troopers sets on his horse and he waits in the middle of fables. As soon as the parade of Confederate cavalry and their General Judson Kilpatrick basically arrives in the very front of where the city of Raleigh is today. This lone trooper pulls out his inspiring hurrah for the Southern Confederacy. People back in Culver, jets down Morgan Street out of town. The only problem is that Morgan Street didn't go out of town. He's dead. His horse hits that head and he whips it to the right. He falls on his wet cobblestones in the drizzling rain that morning. He quickly remounts his horse. Before he gets away, he's captured. He's brought back to the state capitol grounds where a very angry Judson Kilpatrick is so angry that this lone rebel is going to fire at him after this peace treaty. Now, according to According to Cornelia, here's how she told the rest of the story. Brought before the general says, why did you violate the truce? This young Confederate trooper says, well, I didn't know the truce. Kilpatrick says, too bad. Turns to his staff officers and says, take this man out where none of the ladies can see him and hang him. Young trooper begs for 5 minutes to ride his wife, cruelly denied, and he's hung up pretty much with the governor's mansion and buried in Oakwood Cemetery. That is her version. Now, there was another eyewitness there that morning, who saw the whole thing. Now, Millie Henry was an enslaved woman who had been born in Mississippi and brought back to Raleigh late in the war. And she was on the Capitol grounds that morning and saw the whole thing. She saw the trooper fired, she saw him escape, she saw him brought back for the general. Now, in 1937, when the Works Progress Administration was going out across the United States to interview former enslaved people, they found her and got her story about what she saw that morning. When the young trooper was brought back from Kilpatrick, in her version, the general asked, what is your name? He said, I'm Robert Walsh on the 11th Texas Cavalry. Kilpatrick asked the trooper, why did you violate the truce? And in her version, this Confederate trooper says, because I hate the Yankees and wish they were dead and I'm trying. Probably the worst thing you can say. Take this man out of the lakes and see him and hang him. And in her version, she told her interviewers that this young trooper began to laugh. And the laugh maniacally. It's kind of you, sir, kind of you. And she said he laughed all the way till they broke his neck like a goose. So where is the truth of what happened on this young trooper, Confederate trooper that morning? Was it a cover-up by Confederate writers to sort of make more pleasant those blots and blurs Confederates did in those last days, maybe to be more romantic and noble? Oh. Well, we have to look at, we'll dig deeper into this lone Confederate story. And we have to start with these guys. The 11th Texas Cavalry was sister unit to the 8th Texas Cavalry. And if you want to know why the Wild West was wild after the Civil War, look no further than these guys had been in the saddle for almost 10 months, for every day in the saddle, from Chattanooga fighting to Atlanta, from Atlanta to Savannah, from Savannah to Rome. And they grow very frustrated after years of combat, and especially as Sherman's army is marching through the Carolinas, the inability to stop the enemy, that they grew very demoralized. So what we see are a lot of Union soldiers who were found truly dead in a pile. Their throats cut, executed, placards hung around their corpses saying death to foreigners. Largely at the hands of Texas cavalry. They have just become so demoralized in this last months of the war. And to really bring that home, we have to talk about this fellow, John W. Rabb, who is a member of the unit. And Rabb had been wounded in 1863 with a wound that his fellow soldiers said had robbed him of his reason. And he was also known for carrying a pistol with 60 notches, one for every enemy he killed. And a campaign that brought the soldiers here in April of 1865 began on April 10th, a day after Appomattox Courthouse. So to show you how much the war, how many men can keep war at arm's length for weeks, years, decades. 20 years to the day this campaign began, on April 10th, 1885, John W. Rabb took that pistol with 60 notches and killed himself. Ended his life. And what we see so many of them, these soldiers who lived this experience, the war ultimately claimed them in later years.
Did the 60 notches include, was it 59 before he made the decision? What was
But
it?
they couldn't carve 61.
Well, I didn't know if he made the addition, pre.
That's a good question. I doubt. Why? Now, what we also see on the Union side is a very concerted effort to shape the memory of what happened. Now, if you know anything about Gone with the Wind, the March to the Sea, that Sherman had captured the railroaded, freight facilities in Atlanta. He cut himself from all his supply lines by marching across Georgia and living off the land. And the reason he did this is for two reasons. To really march through the heart of the South, to take away the ability to make war and destroy gun manufacturing, railroads, farm stuff. It undercuts the South's ability to wage war. But the other thing it did is it really attacked the mind of the South. If you can bring hard wars to civilians, then they're not going to support the armies in the field. And I like to say that Sherman's March was perhaps one of the largest psychological warfare operations of the Civil War, because it really did terrorize Southern civilians and make them stop waging war. So as they're marching through the South, they send out foraging parties to grab corn, hogs, whatever you can find to bring back to feed the army. But a lot of times, for demoralized soldiers, 80% of Sherman's men were veterans who'd seen combat all through the war. They also slipped through the bonds of military restraint. We see a lot of pillaging, looting, robbery, arson. In some cases, it gets worse between murder, rape. So a lot of these soldiers who had seen a lot of combat and are very shaped by it are let loose in the civilian population. So they're doing a lot of things that we do not think fall into the laws of warfare. And one of the ones you talk about is this guy right here, Samson J. Norton. And he is in 74th Indiana. And whenever the Union Army reaches Goldsboro, take a break before moving toward Raleigh. So in April, Samson is sitting there writing his wife. And he writes to his wife and says that he is thoroughly disgusted with all the horrible things that he's seen the Union Army do. And he wrote to his wife, he said, quote, "The reasons I will give you when I see you. I do not wish to write you because they are a disgrace to the American nation and her armies. And I would to God, they shall never be chronicled in the annals of the 19th century, but is chronicled only by American historians. They will pander up in public opinion sufficiently to gild them up and make them appear in a less repulsive form. To gild them up." So what's he saying is that historians are going to look back at this and it's going to be so bad, they're going to have to change the story to make it more palatable. So wow, when I found this book, I was like, this is amazing that both sides are looking at how this war ended, and seeing how horrible it was that the truth couldn't be really told. And I want to explain why this is the case. And this is where I, as a historian, really get on thin ice and put on my top. But I think it's important to understand the psychological space that Civil War soldiers, ultimately civilians, are going to be in by 1865. Now, your brain can basically divide up into two parts. The very center of your brain is what we call the mid brain. This is kind of your brain does everything you don't think about. It tells your heart to beat, tells your lungs to breathe, tells your body to digest food. So this is what is going on. Now, the front of your brain is going to be where reason, language, judgment, moral values, all that stuff, higher thinking takes place. Well, what we're going to see is whenever you encounter fear, something that you perceive as dangerous, it's a car wreck, it's a tornado, it's a mugging, is it a spider, hook, whatever you perceive as fear, your brain just, it takes all of its energy from the frontal lobe and shifts it to the very center. So if you think about it, you're in a car wreck or something, your body, your heart speeds up. Your muscles start to tension, your vision focuses. This is your body preparing you to fight the fear, flee from the fear, or freeze from it. And this is a natural survival mechanism that everybody has. So what we see is that whenever this click takes place, the brain is inundated by this wonderful neurochemical cocktail. And after a while, your body is flushing all these chemicals out. It's a natural thing, but sometimes some people, this is such a traumatic shift that it actually damages the brain. Or could you imagine being in combat every day where this flip was on and off every day? What we find is that people get stuck in this fight, freeze mode. And that's where people begin to develop post-traumatic stress. Now, unfortunately, because of studying Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, we're able to really see the damage. Before in the old days, somebody would complain of psychological problems and just kind of write it off. But now we have the ability to look inside the brain and say, wow, truly this process is shaping damage in the brain, and we can see it. So on the far left, healthy brain, and traumatic stress disorder, or TBI, traumatic brain injury, something that's coming to our lexicon from football players as well as Iraq veterans rolling up improvised with. Or for the fourth goal, we have both TBI and TBI. So we unfortunately know more about how the brain works now than we ever have. And to look back into the past and historical record and see if we can determine who had PTSD, who didn't. Now, again, this is a modern description of PTSD that we're doing. And again, if you look back into diaries, letters, and accounts, it's all in there to see what these people are feeling and saying. And because you were stuck in one of these fight, flight, or freeze mode, people don't sleep. They're always looking for the speed. Where's the next red coming? They get agitated. They're kind of numb to everything else except for the spear. They can't sleep, they get cranky, they get angry. Flashbacks. Is there something that reminds you of that trauma? The smell, the song? Is it a monument? It's all in there about how these things trigger that to bring that trauma back. And what I kind of want to do is just talk about a couple of people who have emerged from this historic record in these last days, who you think, wow, they are truly deeply affected by the war. And this is one of them. General Gleason, who actually marched into the Raleigh under the shadow of our hanging Robert Walsh. By the time Gleason reached Raleigh, he was a very psychologically traumatized. In September of 1863, about Chickamauga, it was Gleason and his Indiana regiment who basically held a rear guard defense that saved most of the Union Army during the Battle of Chickamauga. They lost about 49%, almost half of the regiment in this defense. One of the great plaudits from his commanders, but it took a deeply psychological toll on them. Afterwards, as their junior officers would notice that Gleason would pull them aside and whisper in their ear that they knew what the spot to remove him from command. Or he'd be seen sitting around the campfire, laughing one minute and crying the next. As the Army entered South Carolina, he reared up in his saddle, the usual strict disciplinarian, and bellowed out, "Don't leave anything alive in South Carolina." So he was able to keep the war at arm's length for a little while, until it overcame him in 1886, when he committed suicide by throwing himself down a flight of stairs. Now, I'm not sure if you know this, but there's an entire genre of Civil War dog literature. It's amazing that people just love to write about Civil War dogs. And this is one of those famous. This is Harvey on the right. He was owned by Daniel M. Stearns, who's seen on the left. And Stearns had a little bit of a humor about him because he made Harvey a collar. The collar said, "I am D.M. Stearns' dog. Whose dog are you?" Now, Harvey and Daniel became very close. And I think as learning his story, Harvey became his support animal, the term we use today, because in the fighting around Atlanta, Stearns had a really hard time. He was in saddle for 48 hours straight. Doctors said he'd come down with sunstroke. And a lot of times, sunstroke is a kind of catch-all term that doctors threw at a diagnosis, they didn't know what was going on. So a lot of times in historic records, if you had ancestors in the war, or look back, sunstroke maybe something more like PTSD. So he's out of the fight for a high fever for a couple of days. He's put back into the line, some of the heaviest fighting outside. Now, after the war, Harvey and Daniel go home. And it becomes very obvious to Stern's family that Daniel is not the war is not the Daniel that happened. He didn't want to spend time with his friends or family or fellow soldiers, but he just wanted to spend time with Harvey. He complained often that when he would walk, the ground would seem to undulate in front of him. And often he would complain that his head felt like it was this tight iron band wrapped around him. And in one of the rare moments of clarity, he told a friend, it was those damn cannonballs. So in 1886, he put into the Cleveland Asylum, Ohio, and stayed in there until a couple months before he died. Just not the same person that left him more. Harvey went on to a lot more regimental reunions without his master. Now, Confederacy also had their fair share of men suffering psychological problems. These are two North Carolinians right here. Thomas L. Cleveland, the Cleveland's Dome, Western North Carolina. Cleveland before the war was very well known, called the Prince of Politicians, and sort of the House and the Senate. Who was in session, he immediately joined the Confederate cause, fought for the campaigns of Northern Virginia. And as the Army, Confederate Army around Smithfield, he wanders into the commander's headquarters, Johnson, and he begs them to let him be a last-ditch suicidal assault on Sherman's army to equal that of the Greeks at Thermopylae. So Johnson stoically replied, he was not in the Thermopylae business. Everything. And Cleveland kept war, had a very successful career after the war, but before he died, he was put into the Western Asylum. It was built in Oregon to handle all of the overflow mental patients that are starting to popular in hospitals in North Carolina. Now, William Holland Thomas couldn't keep war at arm's length for very long. Thomas was known for raising a unit of Cherokee Indians in Western North Carolina to fight for the South called Thomas's Legion. And they participated in a lot of the very brother skirmishing in the mountains of North Carolina. And saw some service in Virginia and Shenandoah Valley. But when he comes home, his wife quickly knows that something's wrong. In 1867, she calls out to friends and family to come and get him. Because he would stand behind her and make her play the family piano by holding an axe over her head. So he came to Dorothy and Dick's here in Raleigh, in and out of asylums for the rest of his life. He didn't really recover from it.
Ernest?
Yeah. Here is a local girl, Margaret Deborah, who had a house full of refugees. And when the Union Army comes, all these traumatized refugees are trying to figure out how they're going to be assaulted by the Union Army. And so they race over to the window looking out of Will's Forest, which is right over and peer out and just see an entire body of Union soldiers, and one soldier climbing up the side of the house. And Mrs. Deborah's friends and family said she preferred suicide rather than being ravaged. She said we can throw ourselves from the window. Show you what civilians were, and also the case of Lucy Battle. And I'll read this to you real quick to see if you can figure out this mystery. Her husband writes to their son here in Raleigh, and this is their house in Chapel Hill. And William writes to their son, John, on behalf of this, and he writes, your mother thinks that she is afraid that she will soon be unable to procure the medicine that she is going to have to take, and a consequence that she will be unable to simply get back into the medical condition that she was some years ago. If she does, she will almost kill her mother. So after losing two sons in the war, I think Lucy had developed an opiate problem. America's first great opioid crisis comes in the wake of the Civil War, with civilians trying to fill those holes in the heart of the war, and veterans who are trying to deal with their own trauma. The orthopedics hospital becomes inundated by patients during the war. One of these is one of my favorite first names ever, Ernest Jenkins. Came in 1867 after fighting war and never leaves. Very, very. Now, the most amazing thing, I want to end on this, are the admission rolls to the orthopedic hospital. I've just come up. So you can really begin to see how war affects people. And this is from 1864 down to April 1865. And you can see people put in there for excessive use of opium, narcotics, or just what doctors call the war. Now, amazingly, the last one, we point out, is that the Raleigh is captured on April 13, 1865. This patient was put in here on April 18, 1865. So when Union soldiers captured the city, this patient was put into orthopedics because of the war. And it's fascinating who he is. He is the first African-American patient in admitted into orthopedics. And we see that Union authorities began to put more African Americans in the hospital, including Black Union soldiers, in the next following years, from 1865 to 1872. But even if you just look at the newspapers, you're going to find so many stories. And I was shocked about this when I did the book to see how many articles after the war talk about those veterans who were struggling with the war on up. You've got soldiers trying to take care of fellow soldiers, the government trying to make hospitals for mentally troubled. And then you've got these articles on the far right, which is veterans killing themselves, which is a reoccurring theme in our Annual Veterans Day. There's 22 veterans killing themselves. So that's the highlights of that. And the war never really ended for a lot of these men. And again, a lot of veterans who are coming back for us today, and the war still happening. So thank you guys so much. Thank you very much for that. Decisive thoughts and theories about the Civil War. We appreciate that very much. As a token for our appreciation, I'd like to offer you a awesome to help you your further research. Stay up 3 more long right before. That's right. And I'm sure person getting around that to the question that anybody has in the office books. So again, thank you very much. Thank you. Take a couple minutes over time with that. We'll do the 4-way test. We'll stand, please. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will be beneficial to all. We deserve